Brings us to our next speaker, Andy Powers. Andy is from SonicWall, and he'll be talking about cyber threats and the need to attack with speed. So although Megan talked about being careful and slow with what you click on, which is altogether true, when you are attacked, you need to react with speed. So Andy's going to fill us in on how to do that.
Great, Andy. Thanks for coming here. And while Andy gets ready with that, just want to give you a little bit of tidbit about some of the statistics out in cybersecurity world, because we do have to be careful. One of the things I like to tell people, they don't realize this, is we think hackers and people who are trying to get into your system are these guys sitting around in a basement eating pizza with their feet up on the counter and drinking a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola. And they're much more sophisticated than that. They're really, in some of these operations, they're full-blown enterprises and organizations. So, we need to expect that. So a little bit of a tidbit. Over this year, 300% increase has been reported in cybersecurity crimes. So,
yeah, right. I mean, it just keeps on evolving. It keeps on increasing. And so we just have to double down. Definitely. And Andy is here to help us learn how.
Yes. Very good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hello, Andy.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you very much for having me. We're excited to be a part of this event today. And actually, great segue into what I'm going to talk about today, just the evolution of cyber threats. Just myself, I'm obviously representing SonicWall today. I'm the channel account manager for New England. And we're excited to work with MIS Alliance. You can see my information there, but as I go through this, if you have any questions, please, as I mentioned, post them in the chat or on Facebook, and we can answer them as we go or wait to the end. So I wanted to start off with a little bit more about SonicWall. I think a lot of people have probably heard of SonicWall already. We're a 30-year-old security company. It's a little bit longer, more aged than a lot of security companies that pop up. But I bring that up because we've really leveraged our 30 years of being there as a security endpoint to build a holistic security story. And leveraging the 3 million firewalls that we have deployed to build a more robust security solution in the cloud and on premise. And I think that's kind of the maturation of SonicWall. We've been separated from Dell now for almost 5 years. SonicWall is a standalone company, privately held, and we've invested in and developed almost over 2 million lines of new code and product. So if you're familiar with SonicWall as a firewall, I would encourage you kind of to look into it a little bit more, because we have a holistic security approach, and you'll hear the term boundless security a lot, because that's what we represent. I think one of the things that this is very topical for this conference and topical for today is, traditionally, cybersecurity was, phishing attacks or really email was the only endpoint that you had to worry about or to secure. And obviously human error was a big result or big hole for IT directors and CIOs to worry about. But now as companies and organizations have developed a more robust security story, whether it be IoT, email, endpoints, remote users logging in, I think that's really become a more larger landscape for attackers to hit you on. And in turn, obviously, the technology world has become more difficult to defend, because there's so many points of entry and points of access that you have to have defended and protected. And that's where we come in. SonicWall is really, the threat intelligence is what we're developing on. And we have an annual cyber threat report that we publish. I encourage you to look at it. I can share it with you separately if you like, but it is on the SonicWall website. And basically what the SonicWall threat report says is, we look at where the attacks are coming from, where they're going, how they're shaped, what they look like. And the previous presenter touched on a great point, is that, the attackers aren't more of the spray and pray now, is that they have a more defined individualistic attack for end users, whether it be that top-down effect, knowing, going through LinkedIn, seeing what it looks like, who the CFO is, who the representative is, who the controller is, and really attacking them with valuable information that they can collect out there. As IT organizations grow, there's more data to protect. And I think that we've seen that globally from SonicWall, that we want to protect our customers from each endpoint and really develop the threat landscape as it evolves. We talked about the phishing, the data encryption right now, crypto jacking, all of that stuff is something that, you know, companies of all sizes need to be concerned with. And a lot of the times myself and my engineer, you know, we're talking to smaller companies that have the same concerns as larger ones, right? If that's your data, you want to protect it. You want to make sure not only for yourself, but for your customers as well, that you're doing everything as possible to work and protect the data. So I think last year, specifically 2020, having a lot of organizations having to go remote, if not 100%, certainly a large number of people are logging in remotely. That has created an enormous amount of endpoints that IT directors have to focus on and protect. I think, you know, you saw during this pandemic that remote workers are becoming more of the norm rather than the exception. And you have to have something in place. And in SonicWall, we want to provide all the information that we can, so you can make an informed decision around what you need to protect, where you need to focus on. And we saw that last year, the cyber attack trends, you know, malware attacks have really gone down, right? I think that speaks to what we already mentioned, is that the hackers are becoming more, I guess, defined in their approach, what they want to focus on, who they're focusing on, how to isolate that person and make sure that they can't ask for help or don't believe they need help. I think the biggest thing for us to touch on in this slide is the IoT attacks. A lot of people, whether it's, you know, Staples or those big attacks, it's really stunning to see how the attackers get in, whether it's, you know, a light bulb or another point of entry where you don't think that you need to protect, but they can get access because that device is connected to the internet at some point, and then just trickle down and keep plugging away until they have the information that they need. So as I talked about, the threat report is a huge piece of information that really allows you to look at what's going on there, what you should be concerned with, and where you need to focus your security. As I touched on it, it's the crypto jacking that really we've seen rise. It's really, you know, as the whole situation evolves, you know, right now crypto jackers are demanding that you don't ask for support, you don't bring in a third party to negotiate. They just will get rid of the data, or they'll, you know, obviously use it and sell it to somebody else. And also the evolution of it. What we've seen is it's continuing to evolve on a daily basis, the different attacks and such. And I go back to kind of the SonicWall landscape and our global presence with over 3 million devices deployed, is we're constantly building a new, stronger security story every day, every moment, to recognize not only where the threats are originating, but what those threats look like and what we should be keeping our eye out for. You know, it was traditional that you would see the link in the email and you'd have to worry about the link in the email. And it's really become more than that. Obviously, SonicWall, we do in our boundless solutions, we do that sandboxing where we're going to break down the link in the email. We're going to look where it's originating from. Is there malicious material in the payload? Is there something sleeping that wait till it gets through that first level of security check and then activates on the back end to start pinging outside of your organization? We're going to do all of that. And we feel that, you know, as the bad guys have become more sophisticated, we really are developing a more sophisticated security solution to assist with all of our customers, wherever they be and whatever their footprint or their landscape looks like. And we talked about malware. Malware fell 22% year over year. And I think, excuse me, as again, we talked about, it's just really the development of the hackers and the investment that they're putting in, right? Gone are the days of the spray and pray. They're more of it defined. They see who's weak and where they're weak, and then they'll develop a story and really try and hone in on that. Ransomware, we talked about that, the growth of ransomware because of the profitability. And whether they're using Bitcoin or whatever their payment method is, they've become really, unpunishable, as it were, because a lot of the organizations that are being hijacked or taken over, they don't have the times to do the negotiation. They certainly don't have the bandwidth to do the investigation or track down somebody when it's really a rabbit hole and you're not going to find anything. So the hackers have seen this as a profitable way to go after businesses, create a nuisance environment, get money, and then go on to the next one. So we've seen that the ransomware is really developed. As we've seen, SonicWall, we're really putting a focus on that, making sure that we're protecting everybody at every layer, and that it doesn't get to that. Ryak was a ransomware attack that SonicWall identified right away. We identified it. We put in processes in place that protected our customers from it. We obviously put out a global awareness of what's going on, what to look at. But I think you can see here in the graph just how we deal with ransomware attacks in real time and how we are able to be flexible and on the go and really build that strong security solution and not being retroactive and trying to deal with something when the damage is done, but trying to be proactive and get ahead of it and build a security solution for all of our customers and make sure that they're safe in real time. And this is kind of interesting. In our threat report, we went by state, and I really don't have an answer for this, but just the breakdown of the ransomware attacks and what states they're being targeted. And I think, and we also touch on kind of different verticals, but you can see Florida is far and away the most attacked state for one reason or another. But it's interesting to look at, where you reside as a company, how your state's been affected, and just really kind of to know, what's going on in and around your surroundings and how we can assist with that. We talked about, what that means for you, how it's affecting different verticals, and you can see the spike in government. A lot of the times we work with state and local agencies, whether it be budgetary constraints or just really the updating of their IT infrastructure. A lot of them, and as they discussed earlier, delivering patches and making sure everything is up to date is the most critical thing that you can do as a security standpoint and security structure. But if you are in these verticals, whether it's state and local police or state and local government, they find that they're more apt to be vulnerable. And also they have a lot of information that it could be embarrassing or it could be financially incentivized to keep private. So the attackers are really targeting that vertical and we're there to protect and help and make sure that we're operating within any budgetary constraints that they have or trying to deliver all the endpoint security that we can, whether it be on premise or in the cloud. This is what we talked about, the development of it. SonicWall, you'll hear us talk about RTDMI. That's real-time deep memory inspection, which I've already alluded to. Going through attachments, going through links within emails, really breaking those things down and seeing where they're originating from. This email is coming from Russia or Asia or Western Europe. This partner doesn't really communicate directly with anybody over there. This is a little bit suspicious. And then we look at the email or the attachment and we break down, what's really in this. So our real-time deep memory inspection is how we're able to kind of address that zero-day threat and really stay ahead of everything that people are looking at. people are sending and receiving, and protect end users from themselves. I think, you know, a lot of times we used to talk to IT directors and their strategy would be, you know, we've instructed our end users, if they do get a link, not to click on that link. If they have any suspicion, you know, run it by us, let us take a look at it before they do anything that may let somebody behind the firewall or into our organization. And more often than not, you know, an end user gets a link that says, check out these funny pictures of cats. And the end user says, I really enjoy cats. And next thing you know, the security's been breached and they've downloaded the virus, or somebody has access to behind your firewall. And so we really think that human behavior, we want to protect people from themselves. And a lot of IT directors don't trust their employees, whether it's the rules in the employee handbook or anything like that. So this real-time deep memory inspection really allows for SonicWall to get out ahead of it and eliminate any problems before they're allowed or have access to each organization. We talked about cryptojacking. You can obviously see the currency involved. As I talked about earlier, right? This is a profitable industry, and that's why the bad actors are really investing in it. I think as we've seen organizations develop a more secure security solution, you can see that you can use real-time examples of people who are having to pay. And then, you know, our constant conversation with IT directors, CIOs is, you know, well, we just don't have the budget. We don't have the money allotted for it. What we're doing is we're kind of helping those folks create an argument where it's a lot cheaper to try and defend your organization rather than being, you know, on the back end of this, having to pay in Bitcoin millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get your data back. And that's where we want to help IT departments really build that whole story around it and make sure that they have everything that they need to be proactive and defensive. You know, I talked briefly about IoT already, and that's where, you know, the SonicWall boundless story really comes in. I think as IoT has grown, we talked about the endpoints that are going to be exposed. I think it was the target attack breach of data where they got in through a thermometer, through a third party. And, you know, it's really amazing. And I dare say clever of, you know, the attackers to look at and really identify the whole of the organization's connection to the internet. And then as we talked about, really ring fence a weak area and then do what they need to do to get access. And then obviously by the time an organization realizes that it's been breached, it's most likely too late. And you're going to be kind of dealing from the back on that. And that's where we want to come in. We talked about all the boundless story and where we fit in. And as I talked about earlier, you know, a lot of, you know, the SonicWall firewalls are still there. We still feel that we're best of breed there, but we do have solutions for IoT, anything cloud app security, which we'll touch on as well. The malware attacks, which we consider non-standard, right? It's, you know, something that we haven't seen before. And that is, you know, the evolution of what's going on out there and how we're dealing with it. And I think, you know, the new attacks and the things that we're seeing represented 14% of all malware attempts through half of 2021, which, you know, I just speaks to kind of the continued development of the hackers and the importance that they have and the investment that they are making into being a nuisance and creating havoc with IT departments. I think that I like this slide because our threat report talks about a global story and what that's affecting as far as who is being breached, where they're coming from, who's attacking and such. And you can see, you know, over 1 million endpoints we've used to build this story. We want to make sure that, you know, we're not isolating our problems, but we're developing a more global footprint to react and be proactive around different threats and where they're originating from and how we can combat that and how we can identify them ahead of time and before they build any issues. Um, as we've talked about, I think the biggest thing that we've seen over the last 2 years now is the escalation of endpoints, right? People logging in from remotely, the cost to not only really ensure that they can be secure remotely, but have access to the data that they need to do their work and be productive. And then, what that means for the security budget, what that means for the IT department, what that means for, their IT roadmap to deliver security and storage and such, and the ability to not only provide it, but also protect it. And I think that's a huge security, that's where we've seen the cybersecurity gap, is what end users expect and what IT is having to deliver to the end users to allow them to work routinely, remotely, and securely. And then, what they've done in the past and what really they're ready for, or that their IT story is now. And that's where SonicWall, we feel that we want to come in, help protect the integrity of the business, make sure everybody's connected and accessible, and making sure that they are secure, remote, and accessible. And that's obviously developing any rules and regulations that you have and deployed already, and making sure that each end user, even when they're remote, is developing under those same rules that they have internally if they were inside the building and you were protecting it. That's where, we talk about the boundless cybersecurity model. That has been our focus. I feel that when we talk about boundless cybersecurity, you have to know the unknown, right? We talked about our RTDMI. That's a huge part of it. Our capture ATP labs, advanced threat protection, our sandboxing, our ability to break down links and attachments, making sure we protect the end user from themselves, and then giving visibility back to the business. And we'll touch on this in a little bit, but our Capture Security Center allows the IT directors, the people inside the business, to really have a real-time look of where are our communications coming from at this moment, what end users are connected at this moment, what end users are sending and receiving stuff, to really give you a footprint, or a fingerprint rather, on what your business is and what they're doing. And then, as we talked about, mix and match the architecture to develop what's good for the business, and how we can best support you, whether it's, more cybersecurity, more cloud security. Obviously, we have a story around Office 365 and G Suite, protecting them, Dropbox and Box, security for that. And then obviously the on-prem stuff, the firewall stuff, the wireless endpoints, the Sonic Waves is our latest release around wireless security and protecting everybody at every endpoint. And this slide to me is really kind of the most clarity. I think from a vision standpoint, this gives you an understanding when we talk about boundless security, what we're talking about. I already talked about the email. We have what we call cloud app security. That's protecting people that are using Office 365. Of course, Office 365 does come with some security, but a lot of the organizations that deploy Office 365 have a secondary or complementary security solution around it. SonicWall is a lightweight plugin that goes to Office 365. You do not need to redirect your MX records. We sit right in Office 365, where the first point of entry, so we can see everything that comes and process it in real time. There's sub-second latency in the email, a great email or a solid email or a clean email being delivered. So end users do not see any latency in the email, but it does give the organizations the ability to really have that level of security around Office 365, and knowing that end users are not going to be put in a position where they need to make a judgment call around links or attachments and such. Secure mobile access. I think that was the best solution we've seen for organizations through this pandemic time, and making sure that you were able to provide an environment to end users that was scalable but also secure. And our secure mobile access really delivers that security for end users who have or IT departments that have end users that are on the go and logging in remotely, whether it's from their mobile device or iPads and such. making sure they have a secure connection, and delivering all the endpoint security that they need on that. The firewalls continue to be our bread and butter. The network security appliances, we have, obviously firewalls for all sizes of business, whether you have, 50 devices that you need to protect or 50,000 devices. I think that you'll see, we talk about being more than a firewall company now, with our holistic approach to security. But at the core of SonicWall, we are a firewall company, and we just released a new versions of firewalls for different sizes, the TZs, the NSAs, and such. So I encourage you to look at that and making sure that you have any questions around that. Obviously, we support MIS Alliance. If you reach out to the MIS Alliance rep, or if you need any sizing assistance or have different questions, we're more than happy to deal with that and communicate with them directly. I will touch on, the IoT we talked about, but the Wi-Fi, SonicWall right now, our Sonic Waves they're about 3 years old. They are one of our newer product lines that we revamped. The Sonic Waves specifically for smaller customers that maybe have remote accesses or several, whether they're in the healthcare field and they have several different offices in the area. You can deploy a Sonic Wave. You don't necessarily need a firewall on site, but that Sonic Wave can act as an endpoint security for everybody in that building, as well as obviously deliver Wi-Fi and secure Wi-Fi and such. So Sonic Waves have been revamped. I touch on cloud app security, but in this slide as well, what we deliver is called Capture Client, which is next generation antivirus. So that's really, the desktop security solution, looking at downloads, PowerPoints, whatever it is that's coming into the organization. Capture Client is that really robust anti-spam or antivirus tool that can eliminate problems, address problems before they get into the organization, and then really deliver that high level security, anti-malware, anti-phishing attacks that are coming through. Capture Client is really had been a key story for us with our end customers, talking about being more mature security. Capture Client is certainly that. So I just wanted to talk about the real-time deep memory inspection. This is, I think, what gets people excited is anybody can tell you, like, we're stopping everything and you just have to take our word for it. What SonicWall, what we like to do is really give end users, whether they be IT directors, CIOs and such, we want to show you not only how we're stopping it, but what that means and where it's coming from. And so it gives you a holistic picture of, why we stopped something, what we found, why we blocked or did not take ownership of it, and gives you that story back to the business. And a lot of people in the CIOs and IT directors and such, they really like having that information because it helps them tell a story, whether that be internally to the CFO, as far as, this is what it means, and this is what we're doing, and this is kind of what we're dealing with on a daily basis, and how we're being exposed and what we want to protect. And I think these types of activities and procedures really allow people to understand, what's going on, how we're working for you, what we're delivering on our end, and what that means for the business. We talked about, all the different endpoints that we have, secure mobile access being one, Capture Client is another one. But again, this speaks to the boundless security story and how we're delivering what we feel organizations need to look at and look for. And I think I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I just wanted to take this as an opportunity as we get near the end. I don't know if we've had any questions or if there's anything I can help with. Oh, I'll take silence as a good thing. Did we have any questions I needed to address?
Very good information for our viewers and for us as well. We have a couple of questions that came through, and I'm going to read through both the Facebook ones and the Zoom.
Sure.
So I've got a question coming through from S. Hall, and it's asking, is a VPN into an on-site server safer than using a cloud-based server such as Microsoft or AWS?
I think the VPN is probably more secure. I think that obviously AWS, everything Azure in the cloud is, security procedures are in place. But I think, our professionals would recommend a VPN directly. And each environment's unique. So I would encourage them to make time, schedule some times with the MIS Alliance folks, and let us get an engineer on site and see how we can best fit that and what the best solution would be.
Okay, great. Next question is from Facebook. So let me bring that up real quick. This is Dan. And what can I do to decreasing my probability of being attacked?
I think the best thing that everybody can do is make sure all of your software and hardware security devices are patched and current. I think that what we've seen is a lot of the issues result in maybe some unpatched or open hardware software that should have been updated a while back. Whatever reason, the company didn't get to it, forgot about it, didn't have time for it, and there's an exposure point that is vulnerable, that obviously gets taken advantage of. So the best thing for folks to do is make sure that everything is up to date and current, and you run all the patches that you need, and you make sure you stay on top of it.
Yeah, Andy, I think that's great advice. And the other thing that you said during your talk here was that it's a lot cheaper to defend your security than it is to pay out. So, this cryptocurrency and all of these other situations that you can find yourself in, if you're not putting these proactive measures in place in advance, it's going to cost a lot more money in the long run if you don't have these patches and these updates put in place.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, unfortunately, we can tell those stories because of those people that have had to pay and what that means for them. And I always tell a story that and they weren't a SonicWall customer, but we kind of got in late on their discussion, and it was a local police department that was connected to the township that they were in, but were exposed. The hackers came in. It was a ransomware attack, and to be quite honest, they didn't have the bandwidth, the time. I think they were a little bit more embarrassed. The IT department was embarrassed, and they ended up paying a healthy sum of money so they could get their systems back online, because they were critical systems. And I think that individual instance, the IT director was always complaining, I don't have enough money. I can't afford that security. We don't have the budget for it. And they ended up paying like 10x as far as what it would have cost to protect them right out of the gate as what they spent to get all their systems back. And, and as unfortunate as that event was, it was certainly eye-opening for the people that controlled the money and the finances, to see what it meant and what it meant to deliver security. And I think we do an excellent job as MIS Alliance is helping those professionals build a story and why this is important. Because a lot of the times the IT directors or the CIOs, they go and they give an impassioned case as far as, what cloud security means to them, but it falls on deaf ears because it's not, kind of top of mind to the finance folks, or they don't understand how they could be impacted it. And I think that there's been, unfortunately, enough incidents now where you see what's dangerous and what can happen.
That's right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Much times it does fall on deaf ears, and that's the toughest point, really. So, Andy, you must have hit a hot button on this, because we got a lot of questions rolling in. I mean, Facebook, there's a lot coming in, so I'm gonna run them by you in warp speed. You
Bring it on.
Answer some of these. So, Joe Castelli on Facebook has asked two questions, really. What is ransomware? I don't understand the difference between a virus and other things. What is a ransomware, and why is it so effective? So 2 questions from him.
Good question, Joe.
So ransomware, and I think the difference between a virus, which is just a nuisance, and ransomware in its name itself is a company that gets behind the firewall and encrypts your data that you need. And to unencrypt that data, you need to pay a ransom. And that ransom typically is a cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin or something else, but untraceable. So a lot of these ransomware attacks are, troubling twofold. First of all, because end users expect instant access to their data at all times, and when the IT director is unable to provide that, it creates a work nuisance. But then even more so, the data that you have that you're protecting as an organization, you feel is secure, and you want to deliver security, whether it be for your employees or your customers, whether it be financial information, paycheck information, all that information that you store in house. If an outside party gets access to it and they encrypt it so you cannot have access to it, and you're going to have to pay a ransomware to get it back, you can pay the ransom to get it back. But we've seen at times, even when the companies pay the ransom and they get their data restored, that data is sold to somebody else, so that data turns up and it becomes an embarrassing situation. So the ransomware is different from a virus because in the name itself, you have to pay a ransom. A virus you just have to deal with and maybe clean it out or deal with it on the back end. But a ransomware is a proactive attack that wants a monetary compensation to get your data back.
Great answer. And the second part of that question is why is it so effective?
Well, because, and I touched on this in the presentation, what we've seen, the reason why it's effective is twofold. Anytime that your data is not accessible, it's an inconvenience, right? And the ransomware attacks, and that this is, kind of why it's a financially beneficial for the attackers, is a company will pay to get past the disruption. It would take them a long time, weeks, to figure out how we can get this access back. How can we restore this data? Do we have any backups that we could probably run and report? Or do we pay X amount and it's turned on just like that, and we don't have to deal with the headache of it? So I think that's why they've been effective, is just because companies, when they do get breached and affected, it's a lot easier to just pay the money, get the data back, deal with the problem, but really limit the downtime that you have and the downtime that the business had. Because the business, if your business is down, you're not making money. So I know it's some of these numbers are reasonable. Sometimes they ask for $50,000 or such. So a company will send the cryptocurrency $50,000 so they can just keep their business moving and do a post-mortem and deal with security on the back end. But that's unfortunately just become a nuisance problem, and some companies just want to pay to get rid of it and move on.
Oh, good answer, great answer. From your experience from this, I mean, how effective is actually paying for it? Do they release it really quickly, or what's SonicWall's view on this?
So the ones that we've seen globally, and it runs the gamut. I mean, obviously you're dealing with bad actors, and how legitimate can a bad actor be? Sometimes we've seen them, restore the data, say thank you and move on. Sometimes the ransom gets paid and the data still gets destroyed and is inaccessible. And sometimes, as I just mentioned, the data gets restored, but then the company thinks, okay, we're back to normal. We really dodged the bullet. And then you see that data that's private information starts to become public, and your end customers or employees are saying, hey, why does my social security number showing up over there, and what happened? And then the company really, if they've tried to keep it quiet, now they have a little bit more embarrassment because they not only paid the ransomware attack, but now the company's trust is eroded, and it's continuing to be an issue. So we've seen it all. I would love to tell you that they're really trustworthy fellas and or people, and they just give you your data back and they move on. But anything can happen.
Definitely not good Samaritans, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think I read a stat once that it takes companies oftentimes 18 months to discover that this breach has even occurred. So things have already started to happen and unravel before that they could have prevented from unraveling and prevented this cryptocurrency ransomware if they had just put those measures in place to begin with. So it takes a long time for these bad actors to get in and start unraveling the whole system, which speaks to your earlier point about prevention. You know, you've got to put the prevention in place.
Oh, 100%. And I think you're spot on, because even when you recognize that something is not right behind your firewall and something's pinging out to a spot that it shouldn't be pinging out to, you didn't just catch it by happenstance the day that they were there, right? They've been in the background building a story. I think that's where Capture Client comes in, because we can, obviously, when we deploy Capture Client, we make sure that your infrastructure is solid. We're seeing the points coming in, but more importantly, anything that's pinging from the inside out, right? Most often they're collecting data that has to go out through the cloud, and Capture Client's able to see that and recognize, is this data, is this something that we want to share? Is this going to somebody that we trust? And if it's not, that's when you can begin to eliminate the problem proactively before they're able to kind of set something in place that locks up your data. But you're right, it's, sometimes they're in there for months and years, and you can see where they're going and what they're doing and the data that they're collecting. And it's, it's a wealth of knowledge. It's a treasure trust of information that you want to eliminate.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Last question here. This one is from Facebook. It's actually a two-part question. This is from Renato Sorao. And he says he has a small law firm office. Since the COVID event, we've all been working from home. We have antivirus software and we feel comfortable. Are we safe? And what can we do?
Good question.
So I would suggest that, antivirus is great, right? And it's certainly a part of the security solution. But in his specific instance with remote legal folks, all of their information is private. I think whether it's running e-discovery or doing anything that really you have to have access for and having to work remote, secure mobile access is what we touched on in what most law firms choose to deploy, because antivirus is there. But as we talked about the evolution of attackers, you want to make sure that you're protecting every endpoint that's accessing your information. And I think this, secure mobile access is set up for a situation just like he described, where those endpoints, you don't know who's pinging in and from where. And even though you have antivirus, there is a ton of exposure now, because you're not in that one roof environment. You have multiple instances of people accessing and needing data. So I would recommend secure mobile access for that instance to really ensure that data is protected securely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. I think that was our last question. You had a lot of stuff rolling in on Facebook. That's great. And I'm happy to have you on, Andy. You did a terrific job. And what's important is the topics that you cover is broad reaching, and it's going to help our clients out. It's going to help them to understand what needs to be done to not fall victim to ransomware and be brought to your knees.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Great
Thank you very much for having me, and I really look forward to any follow-up questions that anybody may have.
Great.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.